Welcome to Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX and again on Saturday morning at 9 a.m. on KATX and KWBY as Angela Robinson joins Stace Gaddy to share important financial information to help you live life on purpose, insurance, investments, estate and tax planning, and much more. All covered now on Life Planning 101.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Life Planning 101. As the nice announcer man said, I'm Stace Gaddy, our guest, expert, and friend, Angela Robinson, in studio. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Stace, and what a great day it is. I was listening to that intro that we had to help people live life on purpose, and I thought, how appropriate is it for this show we have lined out today? Because, so many times we let our emotions get the best of us. And we aren't able to make good decisions because we make emotional decisions. We all do it. We're all human. We can't not do it, right? And it ends up causing us to live life by what we call default. Just things happening to us rather than us making things happen. And so, today that's kind of what this show is about. I'm really excited. We've got some great information. Last couple weeks we were talking, Stace, before the show that we've been
downer.
Yeah, we've been kind of talking about everything wrong in the world, right? And everything that's happened bad in the world. So today we're going to be having a glass half full moment, so to speak.
Sounds good.
And we are going to talk about some incredible things that are happening in the world today and why you should be excited about your future, which is probably something you don't hear very much. And so...
Unfortunately,
no,
these days...
You don't. And also, we've got a guest speaker on at the end of the show. I'm real excited to have him. A CPA is going to be joining us, and he's going to be talking about the most common tax errors he saw this year, give you some tax tips, and the most tax savings that people actually missed on their returns. So you don't want to miss that. That's going to be really, really good at the end of the show. But let's get to it. So we know that the world today is changing, and we've got this growing uncertainty, fear, mistrust with our governments, with everything, right? That's
everything.
Going on. Everything. And it's a constant evolution of things. But here's the deal. That's not the biggest threat to your money.
Oh?
Yeah, right? Isn't that an interesting thought? In fact, we had a great speaker come out and join us for one of our dinners last week up in Fort Worth, and he has been investing since the 70s. Actually, has been in the business investing for other people. And he talks about the smallest thing that can happen to your money, to your investments, is events that occur. Things like 9/11, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have the fundamentals of actually what's going on, like things like 2008. Then you have things that are cyclical, which are just our economic cycles, right? We go through a recession, expansion, that happens. Those are inevitable. But the biggest factor to your investments is you.
Okay.
So I want you to think about something. From 1985 to 2014, U.S. stocks averaged an annualized return of 11.1%. Yes, that included 2008. 1985 to 2014. They averaged an 11.1% return. That's pretty dang good, right?
Sounds like a lot, particularly these days.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Well, here's why it probably does. The average investor's return over that same period of time was a mere 2.5%.
Mm-hmm.
Ouch, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Doesn't even beat inflation. So why is that? It's because we have unbridled emotion when it comes to our money. Okay. Simple enough, right? But if you think about it, every single generation has its share of challenges. And I love this. I'm actually going to take this from the gentleman we heard from Thursday. His name is Charlie Mahar. He's with Tillwood Asset Management, and he actually goes to the Berkshire Hathaway meeting every year. And for those of you who don't know what the Berkshire Hathaway meeting is, that is Warren Buffett's company, right?
It's like the Super Bowl of investors.
That's exactly right. It's a Super Bowl of funds that are on the market today. And he goes to that meeting, and one of the questions in the audience was, what is your long-term sustainable competitive advantage? Now, being a type of conference like this, you would expect some, drawn out, technical, lots of language used. And Munger, which is supposedly, Mr. Munger's probably the brains behind most of what, Warren Buffett has done to make himself great. He's actually been Warren Buffett's mentor during this whole time. He said, "We have tried to remain sane when others like to go crazy. That's our competitive advantage."
Common sense.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? So, if we think about the past generation, the 20th century, I want you to think about, this is something else that Warren Buffett has said. We've endured 2 world wars, the Depression, a dozen or so recessions, financial panics, oil shocks, a flu epidemic, and the resignation of a disgraced president. Yet the Dow rose from 66 to 11,497. Think about that.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. I bet our grandparents and our great-grandparents had some of these same uncertainties, fears, mistrust about our government, about war, about all these things. And what? Isn't it funny? Because they didn't even realize that they were living in the greatest century our world has ever seen and the greatest country our world has ever seen. So it brings to mind, do you think that our children and our grandchildren will be saying the same things about us?
I don't know.
It's a thought, right?
At this point.
Yeah. So, going back to that, that's a good question, Stace. So let's take a look at what's happened since 2008. Here we are, in 2008 to 2016. Has it felt fun? No.
Well, financially,
yeah.
I've had fun.
Yeah. Financially, investment-wise, the markets have just exploded. They've just done extremely well. We're in an 8-year expansion. That's huge. That we're at the top of the average, right, on expansions. Yet, I want you to think about the anemic recovery we've had. Has it been pretty anemic? Has it felt pretty, right? And then China.
Meh.
We've been hearing about China's slowing growth for the last 6 years. I want you to think about that. Every year, it's a big topic. China, slowing growth in China. And it's, is it really hurting us? European debt, that's been going on for 6 years. Can you believe that?
Greece.
Yes, 6 years we've been facing this. Okay, Libya civil war, the Japanese earthquake, fiscal cliff. We were all going to shut down, right, in 2011 and 2012.
Sequestration.
Right. Fed tapers. How about Ebola? Oil price collapse last year. And then the global growth from 2009 to 2016. So, is it really any different?
I thought you were talking about the world today as a glass half full.
That's a good point. When we come back, we're going to talk exactly what that means.
There you go, folks. Back after this. Welcome in, folks, to the second segment of Life Planning 101 from our good friends and experts at Kennedy Financial Services here in Eastland. Angela Robinson, our guest. So, financially, glass half full, glass half empty.
Right. And we've been talking about how the glass is felt half empty. But, if you actually
felt really empty.
It has. Yeah. But if you actually look at what the stock market has done over that same period of time, it was half full, if you think about it. Being the greatest century we ever lived in. And here we are today. And while we're at this, just want to know, what do you think is going to rattle the market next time? Tweet us at KFS Life Planning. Is it going to be a civil war? Is it going to be a terrorist attack, or is it going to be a recession? We want to know from you what your feedback is, because as our show is talking about, those are only a tip of the iceberg. They make the market fluctuate for a little bit, but if the markets can still turn out an 11.1% annualized return through all that stuff we just talked about, it's really about keeping your emotions in check. And that's what we're going to try to do today, because I want to give you some information that is going to make you feel good, because these are fundamentals. These are things that are there, that are proven facts about what is happening in the world today and what to look forward for. Okay, for instance, I just want you to take a gander at which country do you think is the number one producer in natural gas, nuclear production, refined oil output, number 2 in coal production, and number 3 in oil production, as well as exporting all these goods and services. What do you think the number one country is?
One country in all of those?
That's right.
America.
Yeah, that's right. But we don't think about that, do we? We think about all these other countries.
All the bad news we get.
Yeah. And we think about all these other countries taking away all this from us. But we are number 1, number 2, number 3 in these areas. That's huge. That's massive, and we're growing in those areas. What about the global GDP? That is the monetary, for GDP stands for gross domestic product, and what that is actually just the monetary value of all the final goods and services that are produced, okay, across the globe. And I want you to think about something. This is really interesting. We talk in trillions, right? Now since the budget went there, right? Okay. So we understand what trillions are. We finally got our heads wrapped around that since 2009. But in 1990, the gross domestic product for the globe was 22.2 trillion. In 2015, that number was 78 trillion.
That's for the globe.
Yeah, that's more than a 250% return. That's amazing. So if you think about that, think about what it actually takes to be able to get there. It takes global expansion to be able to get there, right?
Printing money.
It takes printing money to be able to get there. So it's really important for us to think about, some of these positive things. What about our middle class? Okay, because this is something I just thought this is incredible. In 2005, 39% of the world population was considered middle class. Now, that is expected to be over 53% in 10 years from today.
Is that right?
Yes, that is
Then
right.
why are we hearing all the time how the middle class is shrinking and, certain politicians, all of our jobs are going away? Is that spin?
I think that's a great question, because here we are in the U.S. and our country is changing. And I do believe that our country is kind of falling off a little bit while the rest of the world is growing. You take all these BRIC countries that, changed their reform to be pro-economic growth back in 1999, and their middle-class populations have just exploded. And the good news is, and this is what people have to remember, is we're no longer an island, the United States. We're a world, and you can invest like a world. You don't have to just look at what the United States is doing, because that's a great question. Why does it feel this way when we're there? And it's one of those things, like in Texas, we didn't really feel what happened in 2008. We really kind of were hindered from that in a lot of ways. Maybe not our money, investment-wise, but, as far as our economy, we didn't really feel that big impact like they did up in Michigan. So it just kind of seemed far away and out of mind, out of sight, out of mind. And I think that's exactly what's happening here, is it's out of sight, out of mind. But you got to think about how many people. And this goes into this next thing. If you think about 1950, 80% of Americans own a home today versus 55% in 1950. 90% have air conditioner versus 0% in 1950. 75% of us have computers versus 0% in 1950. 90% of us own cell phones versus 60% that owned landlines in 1950. $44,000 is the average income today for an American, versus an inflation-adjusted $11,000 in 1950. So we think about all this bad things that's happening, but if you really look at that picture, what's that tell you? It tells you that, we are more middle class today than we've ever been before. Can you imagine living on $11,000 a year today?
No, and we're soft.
Yeah.
Because we have so much.
That's right. We think that, it's getting worse. But in reality, maybe our minds are tricking us, right?
This is a very good reminder today, Angela Robinson.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. Because it is. It's important to look at that glass half full. We forget to do it. We get so caught up in what's going out there. Okay, let's just talk about global violence for a second. Here's a great example. Have you thought about the dramatic decrease that we've had in global violence? Yes, I said that.
I happen to know this one just because I'm a news junkie and that's more my field.
Yeah.
But that's true.
It is true. It is true. Okay. During World War II, 3.7% of the population was killed in World War II. Only 0.1% was killed in Vietnam. And then in our current conflicts, these 21st century conflicts that we have, it's 0.01%. And I know it seems scary, and I know there's a lot to fear, and that does not need to be undertaken. That can't change in a moment. But, we are handling ourselves in such a better way to try to resolve conflict today rather than just cutting off people's heads.
Globally,
that's right. That's huge. And, you add to all that, the American dream is alive and well. We just talked about how many people are homeowners, right? But I want you to think about something really interesting, and there is no other country in the world where you can say this. Did you know that 80% of our great nation's millionaires today didn't inherit more than 10% of their worth? That is our great nation at its worth.
Yeah, you can still do it.
You can still do it, okay? It isn't gone. We look at these deals, we get them every year. And by the way, all these facts and figures, you definitely go onto our website, see these, go on to katxradio.com, kwbyradio.com, kennedy-financial.com. Get on there and look at these, because all these facts and figures are on
the
there.
article.
That's right. So you can look at them, you can look at the resources, you can look up the resources. And, we look at this type of stuff every year. What is this doing? For instance, we think about manufacturing, made in America. That's what we want to hear, right? But yet we all shop globally to get the cheapest thing, right? But I want you to think about, did you know that today, the top value-added manufacturer today is the USA?
I wouldn't have thought that.
No! So remember, the world is changing rapidly, and this just might be considered the good old days someday. Just don't forget that. let your emotions sit aside and let your money continue to work for you. Okay?
Or rejoice.
That's right.
Rejoice at the news that Angela Robinson is bringing us today. Facts and figures that say something other than the culture is saying.
That's exactly.
For political reasons.
That's correct.
Perhaps,
right? So when we come back, you don't want to miss it. Our special guest speaker talking about the most common tax errors he saw this year.
Fantastic. You're listening to Life Planning 101. We'll be back after a short break from our sponsors. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the final segment. This morning, Angela Robinson, our guest and expert, and we have a special guest, Angela.
That is right, and I'm really excited to have him back on the show with us, Mr. Blake Briscoe. He's a certified public accountant that we've actually been, doing business with for almost a decade. We're nearing that corner, and I tell you what, he's been one of our mentors in tax and teaching us a lot of things that we need to be looking for to help our clients, and just been a great business relationship that we've had with Mr. Briscoe. So we really appreciate him and appreciate him being on the show today. And I know, Blake, you've got some great information just coming off of tax season, and what you saw is maybe some things that people can be looking for and people need to be looking to go to in 2016.
Yes, ma'am. It's good to be here this morning. I think, Angela, one of the biggest things that we saw is we had an increase, I think we talked about it before, in the identity theft. We unfortunately had more issues come up with people trying to file their returns and finding out that they'd already been filed by somebody else.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it was kind of an increase. So I know that's something that's not much that people can do, but that'll be something they'll work with the rest of the probably who knows how long until they maybe get that straightened out if they can. Another thing that we saw is seems to happen a lot is people claiming their kids and not knowing if their kids have already filed a tax return, and and so that with the system now that we have, it kicks it out immediately. And so just being aware of, talking to your kids and finding out if they filed a return, if they're off at college and thought they'd just go down to another preparer and get it done real quick, and then all of a sudden the parents go and file and find out that that's already been taken care of. So
Oops.
That seems to have happened some.
And that could probably be pretty costly, too, I imagine.
It can be, because then they have to amend the child's return and then turn around and come back and file their return. It can delay their return also because of the waiting for their return to go through and be processed and corrected. I think that probably another thing that we saw that I don't know if there's much we can do with is that K-1s and 1099s and everything seemed to be a little bit slower this year, and people were bringing their information in and trying to work through the return, and then all of a sudden something would show up in the mail. So that's, with the deadlines allowing partnerships, corporations, stuff like that to prepare their returns and get extensions, and people not knowing that those were coming out, and all of a sudden here I've got a 1099 show up, and I've already done my return, and so it's one of those sort of things that can happen. So you kind of have to watch out for those things.
Yeah, so let me interrupt you there, Blake, because this is a common question that we get all the time about, whether or not people can file an extension, should file an extension, if that would actually cause them to get red flags, so to speak, for audit. And, if you're getting your information late like that, putting everybody in a crunch, including you, the CPA, right, and putting at risk of, more mistakes to be made just because we're rushing, is that really a good idea?
Extensions are actually not a bad idea. It's not a problem. It's not a red flag to IRS in any way, form, or fashion. The return itself, depending on the numbers and if there is something on it that has that's kind of a risk area, is really where that comes from. Filing an extension really doesn't do that. In fact, there's actually, I can't remember the name of it, there's a court case of sorts that's been proven that tax returns are extended actually have a smaller chance of being audited. And
wow.
So it's an interesting kind of story there where most people think that if I get an extension, I'm going to be in trouble. The key to remember is if you owe tax, you do need to pay that on April 15th. And so therefore, if you do get an extension, in order to keep from being penalized or have any interest accrued on that, you do need to calculate and figure out what the tax is and pay that on April 15th so that you won't have any problems, or know that you're going to have that happen, but the extension itself does not cause a red flag.
Good. Well, thank you. Do you have any last-moment tax tips that you can give our audience?
I think the biggest thing that we see is that when you get your stuff ready to come in or take it to your tax preparer, whether it be us or someone else, Be sure that you have everything together at one time to take into them, and wait till you get everything in before you go and see them, just because it helps speed up the process for you and for them in order to get your return done quickly.
Good. Well, thank you so much, Blake, for being on the show. Blake Briscoe out of Stephenville, Texas, CPA and tax preparer. And we really appreciate you and appreciate all of the help that you give Kennedy Financial Services as well and all of our clients.
Thank you, Angela. You
Absolutely.
too.
Have a great day.
You too.
With that, let's wrap up the show, get to our trivia. As we know, we always like to hear that. And we're giving away another crash test on your portfolio. I know we've been talking this a lot, and, we go back in line. If what happens if we end up with a terrorist attack or a recession or civil war, what is that going to do to your portfolio? What is actually going to happen? And so we can actually put that through a system and show you exactly what it would do. So let's talk about our trivia. What percentage, and this goes back to some of those numbers we gave you, okay? What percentage of the world's population is expected to be middle class by 2025? Is it 24%, 39%, or 53%? Get us your answer. Life planning at Kennedy-financial.com. Also, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Kennedy Financial. My name is Angela Robinson with Kennedy Financial Services here in Eastland, Texas. We hope everyone has a great week. Thanks for listening, and God bless.
Thank you so very, very, very much, Angela Robinson, and everyone at Kennedy Financial, and Mr. Blake Briscoe. A tremendous program today. Folks, thank you for listening. Come back again next time for more Life Planning 101.
Thank you for joining us for Life Planning 101, brought to you by Kennedy Financial Services of Eastland. Tune in every Monday morning at 8:30 on KATX, and again on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on KATX and KWBY for more Life Planning 101.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through VSR Financial Services Incorporated, a registered investment advisor and member of FINRA SIPC. Kennedy Financial Services is not owned or controlled by VSR Financial Services Incorporated.